Chapter 5. The search begins. They reached the market without any adventures. The bus conductor was quite nice about Carbonel going on top, and insisted on calling Rosemary Miss Whittington, which made everybody in the bus laugh. When they reached the market, it was looking as she had expected to find it the day before. There was a jolly bustle of busy people with bulging shopping bags and baskets, with the noise of people chatting and stall holders crying their wares. Rosemary could happily have spent the afternoon just looking round, but she knew that more serious work was on hand. They had agreed to go round all the stalls that sold second-hand things first, in the hope that Mrs. Cantrip might have sold the hat or the cauldron to one of them, and all the time they were to keep a look-out for the old woman herself. There was always the chance they might find her there. Rather regretfully, Rosemary left the cheerful stalls that sold fruit and groceries and cotton frocks and china ornaments. The second-hand stalls were on the edge of the market, near the spot where Rosemary had bumped into Mrs. Cantrip. They were a little forlorn, these stalls, like the people who kept them. There were rickety bedsteads and lumpy mattresses for sale, chipped chests of drawers and piles of old shoes and gramophone records, and bundles of spoons and forks tied up like bunches of flowers. There was an old-fashioned hip bath full of oddments marked, all in this lot, sixpence, which Rosemary would have liked to explore. "Isn't it funny how old clothes seem to go on being like the people who've worn them?" she said to Carbonel, looking at a limp hat with feathers on it that was perched jauntily on top of a large chipped china jug. "Ah, that's just what I say," said an old man who was sitting on a chair behind a trestle table covered with old books. Seeing no one else near, he thought she was addressing him. "There's more profit in new uns, but not the interest, I always say. Was you wanting something, dearie?" He looked a kindly old man, and Rosemary plucked up enough courage to say, "Please, have you got such a thing as a witch's hat?" The old man began to laugh. He laughed until the laugh turned into a wheezy cough. When he'd recovered, he wiped his red-rimmed eyes and said, "No, dearie, nor no fairy wands neither. Then his ought to supply a present." He went off into another wheezy laugh at his own joke. Rosemary moved on to the next stall. Quite clearly, she decided, she must use more guile. "Why don't you use your eyes more?" said Carbonel crossly. "That's the worst of humans. They will talk too much." But use her eyes as she would, Rosemary could see no trace of the hat or the cauldron. There were half a dozen possible stalls, but she looked and hung about until she felt she could write down from memory exactly what was for sale on each one. So she decided to walk round the market on the chance of seeing Mrs. Cantrip again. She walked all the way round, which took some time, because she couldn't help stopping to look at most of the stalls, and then she found herself back at the wheezy old man. All this time Carbonel had padded quietly after her. Her legs were aching by now, so she sat down on an empty packing case, and because she felt it was too public to talk to Carbonel, she just stroked him. And suddenly the wheezy old man said, "Like an apple ducks." It was a rather hard green apple, but Rosemary was very grateful for it. She thanked him gravely and munched away. "Are you a cat?" asked the old man. Rosemary nodded. "I don't know when I see such a big un, except it was one I saw yesterday on this very spot. Belonged to an old woman. She was a caution." He broke off to laugh wheezily again. "You see some queer things in my trade, but I never seen a queerer than she was. Like an old rag bag, with a little hat on top, smart as kiss your hand. What's the matter, ducks? Bit of apple gone down the wrong way?" Rosemary nodded and wiped her eyes. Was she selling anything?" she asked, as carelessly as she could, when she'd stopped coughing. The old man wheezed again, but this time with indignation. "She stands next to me, and all she's got to sell are an old hat. You never saw such a wreck of an old thing. Black it was with a point, and an old coal scuttle, one of them with 3 feet and an handle over the top. Fair crocked with soot it was." "How queer," said Rosemary. "Did she sell them?" The old man went off into such a prolonged wheeze that she could have shaken him with impatience, and when at last he emerged, he said, "She sold 'em all right enough. They've been me here since 9 o'clock, and all I sold was a book of sermons marked down to 2pence, and a pair of button boots. And here's this old besom setting up for half an hour, and blessed if she don't sell her hat and her coal scuttle right off."
Some people don't recognise high-class goods when they sees 'em. And where was her licence, I should like to know, he added darkly, dusting a glass case full of moth-eaten birds as he spoke.
What sort of people bought them? Asked Rosemary, quite surprised at her own cunning.
I didn't see who bought the coal scuttle. I'm not one to go nosy parkering, but business being slack, I noticed a youngish fellow bargaining with her for the hat. Something artistic, I'd say, by the look of him. You gets to be a student of human nature in my job. First thing I sizes up their clothes. He was good, but wore. 15 bob I'd have given for his coat, and a tanner for his hat, not a penny more. But a gentleman, mind. And would you believe it, when she asked £1 for her old hat, he didn't beat her down more than a couple of bob. 18 shillings he paid for it, and looked at it all the time as if he was a picturing of his long-lost ma.
Most interesting,
he kept saying. A genuine 17th century beaver what's it. And the old woman grinning and cackling like a lunatic.
Whoever could it have been? Said Rosemary.
Well, that's what I says to myself. A chap what's silly enough to cough up the best part of a quid for something the cat might have brought in is too good to lose sight on. So I says, wouldn't he like to have a look at some of my hats? But bless you, he wouldn't even look at my lagoon with the roses. When he'd gone, I did find an old envelope. Dropped it as like as not when he got his note case out.
Did he tell you his name? Asked Rosemary, hardly able to hide her eagerness.
No, just my luck. I only said, to the occupier, and his address underneath. It was one of those powder soap coupons to buy a month's packet of Lathero for the price of a little.
I've got it somewhere. The old man rummaged about in his many pockets.
Here it is, the occupier. You can have it if you like. I dare say it'll come in handy for your ma. My old woman don't hold with these newfangled things.
Oh, thank you, said Rosemary, and there was no doubt she meant it. She skipped off, clutching the envelope, and sat down on an upturned bucket behind a battered wardrobe where she was unlikely to be overheard talking to Carbonel. It says, to the occupier, 101 Cranshaw Road, Netherley. You'll really handle that quite creditably, said Carbonel. I wish we could go there straight away, but it's 4 o'clock already, and I promised I'd have tea ready for Mummy when she came home. We'd better go. Rosemary jumped up and started to walk rapidly the way they'd skimmed so easily the day before on the broomstick. But with the letter in her pocket, the feeling they'd achieved something made the way home seem quite short. Carbonel padded silently on in front. And that's the end.